Hey guys, today we're going to be installing Arch Linux. So this is June 2020. We're going to do a fresh install of Arch Linux, and then we're going to install X Windows. We're going to try installing XFCE, i3 gaps, and we're going to try installing KDE. We're going to follow my own guides that I've already written. So I'm actually doing a screen capture right. Oh, I guess you see that because yeah, I'm trying out a new camera layout. So I'm recording myself on the camera while recording my screen. So you'll see here that yeah, we have the Arch Linux 2020-0601 x86-64 ISO selected. We're installing this in VirtualBox. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start, and the VM is going to boot up. Alright, so we're going to select this first option, Arch Linux, and let it start booting up. And as I said, I'm going to use my own. I'm going to follow my own guides to do this. I have one guide I wrote for just installing Arch Linux, and another one that another few guides I wrote for installing different window managers. So we're going to try to follow those and see how they work and get a full working system with X Windows. We're going to get a display manager working too, but first we're going to try the xinit-rc script just to play around with it and see how that works as well. So I'm kind of shooting from the hip here. I haven't scripted this video out, I mean, except for having the guides to go off of, but I haven't worked out the exact order I'm going to do these things in. But this should get you an Arch system up and running. So let's see. I'm going to go to this site here. This is where I have all of these Arch Linux related guides, and this is my Arch Linux install guide, and here you see the embedded video. This is my old Arch Linux video where the audio didn't come out that well. We're going to be replacing that one. So with this one, and this one is going to be more complete. That got you up with the text-based system. Now we're gonna go ahead and work on getting X Windows installed. But first we're going to go through the entire install again in this video. So basically, as you see here, you want to start out with downloading the install media. Here's the download. Basically, if you type Arch Linux into Google, it's going to come up with their site first, and it gives you all the different sections of their site too. One of them is download, so it's not hard to find, but that's this link right here. You can download it from here. Use BitTorrent if you want. You can use a regular HTTP. I had fewer issues with that. Maybe I'm just not using BitTorrent correctly. In any case, important to note that you should use GPG to get the key and just verify the key. So that's important. I've already verified the checksum of the ISO that I downloaded earlier this evening, so I'm good to go there. Nothing corrupted, nothing tampered with, but yeah, that is an important step. So this page is actually going to be in the link in the description of the video. So just check the description and follow that link to if you want to actually see this guide and this site yourself. So you can pretty much follow along, copy and paste all the commands I have here, anything you need. You actually won't be able to copy and paste if you're running in VirtualBox like I am, or even less so if you're running from an actual physical machine like your laptop. You're probably going to have a hard time with that. While you're installing. Once it's installed, you have X Windows installed. If you have the VirtualBox tools, you should be in a little bit better shape. But that's another story. You're probably, but yeah, still it helps to be able to actually access this and not watch it in the video. Here's how you would create a USB install disk if you have the ISO. Just use the DD command, set block size to 4 megs. The in file is the ISO, the out file is whatever device it is. Make sure you swap this with the correct device and don't overwrite your hard drive. I should probably put a little warning in there, but yeah, do make sure you know what you're doing there and write to the correct device. And this is generally the exact command you would want to use. Swap out the device, swap out the ISO name. So you're going to want to boot from your install media, which is what we've done here. We've booted from our install media, and you'll notice we're at we're at a prompt here. We're logged in as root and add a prompt, and we basically do everything by hand in Arch Linux. So these are the text editors available: Nano, VI, and Vim. You'll also have the elinks browser available, so you can actually read the Arch Wiki while you're installing it on the command line. So if you only have one laptop, you're installing Arch on it, you do get the elinks browser, and you can actually look through the guide while you're installing, which is pretty convenient. Yeah, you could switch to different virtual consoles with Alt-Arrow key combo. You can view the install guide, yeah, like that. Oh yeah. So if you VI the install.txt, it has the install guide right there. So you don't even necessarily need elinks, but they're going to have the whole Arch Wiki and anything else you might need on there. Just good to be aware of. Keyboard layout. The default layout is US. If you want to change it, you can do this. Let's demo that. Let's just take a look at that. ls usr share KDE key maps, and go like this, .map.gz, and here you can see all the key maps available to us, and the names that, while not always consistent, generally tend to make sense. What else? Yeah, so if you wanted to load a key map, you could say load keys, and for example, in the example we have here, it's DE Latin 1. We're not going to change that. We're going to leave it to the default. We're just going to leave it as is. We're just sticking with a regular English keyboard layout. Let's see, verify boot mode. So yeah, you can ls. Let's take a look at this. ls sys firmware EFI vars. All right, so can't access it. So yeah, that is, if it exists, the system is going to boot in UEFI mode. And if it doesn't exist, it may boot up with BIOS or CMS mode. So there you go. That's how you would, that's like a little, that'll tip you off that it's going to be boot one way or the other, and we'll use that information later, probably. Network setup. So yeah, I covered a lot of stuff that we're not necessarily going to actually do in this specific instance, a lot of general stuff that'll help in different situations. You can pretty much, this should be working by default. If we look at this, so you can say if, let's see if that, yeah, I do have the ifconfig command. I wonder if they have the IP, yeah, you have the IP command and the ifconfig command. So you can say IPA or ifconfig-a, and you'll notice I have an IP address. And you can say host google.com, and we can resolve google.com. So where we can do DNS queries and find out where Google is. So I wonder if wget is even on here. Wget, yeah, wget google.com. Yeah, so you can even pull down Google. All right, yeah, so we're fully online by default. We just boot right up with all the defaults, and we're fully connected to the internet. We can do whatever we need. We're going to need that for Pacman. So a lot of this installation uses the Pacman installer. But we'll get to that. So yeah, network setup. We're not going to actually do any of that now, but there's a whole lot of stuff here that you might need in certain circumstances. You can define, and I have a link here to the Arch Wiki network configuration, but you could say IP link, IP adder. IP adder is the same as IPA. You can see your network interfaces. Let's just say IP link for good measure. IP link, yeah. Anyway, you can configure your static a static IP address if you want, add a route that you want. You can echo your name server to resolve.conf. Actually, let's see what resolve.conf is right now. Yeah, so it's using itself as the, yeah, anyways. So I guess it has some service running for that at the moment. But you can also tell it to use Google's name servers if you like. For Wi-Fi, you can bring up a Wi-Fi menu for your interface. You can verify connectivity by pinging archlinux.com, ping archlinux.org. There we go, we're pinging archlinux.org. All right, time and date. Set NTP to true. Make sure the system has the correct time and date. Verify the system is working. All right, time, date, CTL, set NTP true. Because we're going to want that to be set. Time, date, CTL, status, and here we can see, all right, real-time clock RTC in local time zone, no. NTP is active. Local time, it is telling me that it is 5 a.m. UTC, which it is not. Well, it probably is in UTC. I don't believe this. I believe I have the wrong time zone right now. So that's fine. We can fix that. We'll get to that. So yeah, it's put us in the UTC time zone, so it thinks it's 5 a.m. It's actually only 1 a.m. right now. All right, let's scroll on down here. Disks. So quick way to list what devices you actually have is LSBLK. LSBLK, and there we go. We see we have Loop, SDA, and SR0. SR0 is our, I believe that's the ISO that we actually booted off of, and the loopback device is AirFS root. That's also something boot disk related that is not important. Just SDA. SDA is our hard disk, so that's the one we care about. That's where we're going to install. So that's the only thing you really need to pay attention to there. Required partitioning. You need a root partition, and if UEFI is enabled, like what we checked before, you'll need an EFI system partition. It's not enabled because we're in a VirtualBox, so no EFI system partition. So that's kind of nice. All right, so other partitions like var, there are reasons to set up other partitions. Like you probably want to keep things simple, but there are plenty of use cases for creating additional partitions. Blah blah blah. Like you might have your var partition for logs so that it doesn't fill up your root partition, and you might have a separate data partition. We're not doing any of that today, but you can read about that on this page here. We talk about like basic partition layout. If you have BIOS or MBR, you might have a root partition, then a swap partition, or you could have a swap file instead of a swap partition. If it's UEFI or with GPT, you would probably have a boot or EFI partition, a root partition, and a swap partition as your basic partition layout. Yes, we're going to use fdisk. I have a little table here telling you some of these commands you can use with fdisk. M to view a list of commands, P to print the disk partition info, N for to create a new partition, L to list known partition types, T to change partition type, which is important to remember to do, and also remember to use W to write the partition table, and A to set the bootable flag. Those are all things you can easily miss, and I have missed myself in the past. So here we go. The actual commands, subcommands, and parameters that I used the last time I did this. I said fdisk dev SDA, MP. So I listed out the commands. I did P to print the info. I created a new partition. Hit P for primary partition, 1 for the first one, I believe, and hit enter, then plus 512 for the size, and then P, and then L to print it, and then to list the known partition types, and then a T to set the type to 82, and then a P, well, it makes sense when you actually see it, but a P to print the info again, N to create a new partition, P for primary, 2 for the second partition, enter, A to set the bootable flag, and then 2 to tell it which one's going to be bootable, so that's my root partition. So it looks like I created a boot partition and a root partition. So, and then I used W to write it all out at the end. So, you know, otherwise, if you just saw this by itself, it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I have a lot of screenshots of what I did the last time. I believe I even forgot to make it bootable, I think, and then ended up writing to it. That looks like we still need to make it bootable. Okay, anyways, I'm going to go through this really quick. I think, if I remember correctly, the official installation guide doesn't talk about how to use fdisk, which I mean, maybe they just assume you know how to use it, and that's fine. But if you want the full instructions on how to install Arch Linux and you're just not familiar with fdisk, like a lot of people aren't familiar with it, then this is really useful. So let's see here. Let's give it a shot. Fdisk dev SDA, and I'm just gonna follow my instructions just so you can see. M for help, that gives you all your commands that you might need. You can do all sorts of things, manipulating disks and partitions. We don't care about any of that at the moment though. So P for creating a new partition. And let's see here. So we are going to, or P to print, N to create a new partition, then P for primary, and then we're going to say 1 for the first, and hit the default starting at that first sector, and then the last sector. So we're going to say plus 512 M for 512 megs, and what I'm forgetting why I did this. We'll see. We'll get to this. I believe I used this as swap space because I don't think I needed a boot partition. But let's see. So print. So there we go. We use the P to print, and now we see that we have a partition defined. Now let's see here. What else do we need to do? We need to all right. What are we going to list known partition types? All right, that's fine. Type, say 82. What was this part? This was so this was a Linux partition. So 82 is swap. So yeah, that was our swap partition. So 82 changed partition from Linux to Linux swap / Solaris if you were running Solaris, I guess. So there we go. Print it out again, and we see that it is successfully changed to Linux swap. So now we are going. So we changed the type. Now we're going to create another new partition. So N for new partition, P for primary. And you'd only need extended if you wanted to create an extended partition. Then you could create a whole bunch of partitions inside it. Well, you could create a primary partition and create a bunch of extended partitions inside that primary partition. But if you need fewer than 4 partitions and you know that's all you'll ever need, then you can just make them all primary, and you'll, I guess, presumably have fewer potential issues, maybe. But one way or another, primary is preferred, I guess. And let's see here. So N for new partition, P for primary, and let's see here. We're going to say P for 2. We're going to make it partition number 2, which is, I guess, the default that it had already selected for me. So enter, and take the default for the first sector, default for the last sector, because that's just going to be the end of the disk. So exactly what we wanted. So the size is like 64 gigs because 64.5 gigs because I gave it a 65 gig hard drive. That's how much space I allocated. And then we are going to say let's see here, setting the bootable flag on partition 2, our root partition. So partition 2 is our root partition, set that to bootable. You wouldn't do that for our swap partition, just our root partition. Not boot, but root. Our root partition is going to be bootable. So, and at the end, of course, remember to write to the disk. So W there. All right, and there we go. So, yep, that should have a, let's see how this looks if you use a -L. Just fdisk-L, and you can see there are partitions. You see that little asterisk under the boot column for SDA2, showing us that confirms that it is bootable. So that's all nice and everything. We can skip past these screenshots from the last time I ran this and get down to disk formatting. So now that we've partitioned it, our partitions are not formatted yet, so we're going to need to do that. So let's see here. Format the root partition. This is always nice. So mkfs.ext4. So create let's make file system extension 4 file system. That's been the standard on Linux for quite a long time now. So let's see here, dev SDA2, which is our bootable root partition. So there we go. We wrote that file system pretty quick. Now we're going to turn on swap. So initialize and turn on swap partition. Yeah, it's SDA1, not 2. I wrote the wrong thing here in my guide. In any case, mk swap dev SDA1 and swap on dev SDA1. And there we go. Yep, so we can see swap is now not being used, but we can see that it's defined. I probably should have ran that command before defining it. It'd be interesting to see, but either case. Also, you may mount any other file systems that you created on MNT, for example. Yeah, so if we mounted another partition like EFI and we needed to put things on there, we could do that. We're not going to need that now, though. So we're going to skip that. All right, so installation, optionally edit this file in place and place your preferred mirror at the top. Let's take a look at the file just to see what's in there. You can change your mirror this way, pacman.d mirror list. So, all right, so so edit this file, place your preferred mirror at the top. So we're in New York City right now, and we see that at the top of the file, there's a server in Israel. So we don't want that. We want one at least inside the United States. So we're going to take one from kernel.org. I didn't think I was going to actually have to customize this one, but it looks like I am. So I'm going to place this server from kernel.org in the US right at the top of this file. And so I'm using VI. Nano is so I should have mentioned this at the beginning. Nano is a completely acceptable editor to use, and if you're not familiar with the VI, don't give yourself any headaches early on. I mean, you probably want to learn it. You probably should learn it at some point. Not everyone's going to agree with me on this, but I think VI is important to know because the reason is because it's pretty much guaranteed to be on just about any Linux or Unix system at all, old or new or whatever. They're all going to have VI. So long as you know VI, you can edit files on any system. Now, a lot of people think it's stupid having an edit mode and a command mode, and a lot of people hate VI. And if you're not familiar with it, don't try to learn it while you're installing Arch Linux. You should probably learn it at some point, but make things easier on yourself and just use Nano. Nano is a completely acceptable solution. Here I'm using VI, so I did a YY to yank the line, and I did a P to paste the line at the top. It's pretty convenient. It's actually a whole lot faster than using Nano. I think it's faster. I don't know if there's an equivalent command in Nano. It's more intuitive though. Nano's that you can use like your arrow keys to move up and down, and there's no modes. It's just like a normal editor, except that it's on the command line. So there's that. So I'm going to right quit. So when you want to get out of this in VI, :WQ, and I'm out. The file is written. So there we go. So we're going to install essential packages. This is going to include the base package, the Linux kernel, and some firmware for common hardware. So the first thing we're going to do is say pack. Okay, so this is kind of like ch rooting. No, well actually I'm honestly not sure how this command works on the inside under the hood, but packstrap mnt, should I have mounted that? Mnt base Linux firmware. I may have missed a step. Yes, so right after we created our swap partition, make sure you don't miss this step. You'll figure it out when things don't work, hopefully, or have a hard time, but make sure that you remember to mount your root partition over MNT. So right now we booted off of a CD, so our root partition on the hard disk is not even mounted, but now we have to install the system onto that root partition, and in order to do that, we're going to mount it, and we're going to mount it on /MNT. That's where you traditionally mount things, except these days, for the last however many years, on Linux systems, people mount things under media, which is fine. Just another place to mount things. When I started learning Linux, we used to mount things under MNT. That's just how things were done back then, back in the good old days. So anyways, let's make sure we mount our root file system. And we can skip over the EFI stuff because we're just not doing that. We're not using EFI, we're on VirtualBox. So let's see here, mount dev STA2, which is our root partition on MNT. So there we go. And we can see it is mounted at the bottom there. All right, so let's go back down and do packstrap. So packstrap MNT base, base Linux and Linux firmware. So Linux firmware is obviously firmware, and just Linux is the Linux kernel, and base is the base system, or the base package. It includes everything. It makes it an Arch Linux install. So let's give this a shot. This should take a little while, but let's let it run. And while that runs, so after this, we're going to do the fs tab and ch root steps. So yeah, I guess this is where we're stopping until this finishes installing. And I forget how long this took last time, but it's not too bad. And if I choose to fast forward this part of the video later on, I'm not sure if I will or not, but it would be kind of funny with this overlaid video section that actually shows my face in the video. And I guess while that's going, we can open up another tab with, I'll look for my other Arch tutorials. Arch, alright, so way down here. Alright, so with a bunch of other things I wrote that are Arch related, I should create videos for all of these. Alright, so I think way at the bottom here, I did i3, alright, here's XFCE. Here's i3 gaps, and here is KDE, and we're not going to do the fonts or Jupyter. We should do Jupyter. I'll do that in a separate video. How to enable multi-lib, yay, and this thing, Linux BS. All right, maybe we'll do this. This BSPWM is a window manager. It doesn't do anything unless you do a fair amount of configuration. So there's not a whole lot to see with that. I have not done all of that yet, so the best we can get is like a blank screen with that. There's a lot more to be done with it, but yeah, it's like an interesting alternative to yeah, at the time of recording this video, I pretty much recommended people just go to another guide that tells you how to install this. But this is a stub, and in the future I'm gonna finish this up, but there's a fair amount of it's more involved than other window managers. The others are pretty easy. KDE is ridiculously easy. It's all pretty easy. We're gonna get to that stuff, but for now it looks like our installation is finished. I think that only took maybe like 3 or 4 minutes or something like that. It was pretty quick. All right, so installation is done, and we can move on to the fs tab and ch root phase. So we're gonna generate our file system table. So you do this by typing gen fs tab -u mnt and say mnt etc fstab. And for those of you not that familiar with Linux, the fs tab is basically a table. It's your fs tab file system table. So it's a table of all the file systems that get mounted upon boot. So we're going to want like swap in your root partition in there. So this should generate it for us, but let's see. All right, generate the fs tab. I want to cat that out just to see it. And yeah, there you go. So it's identifying the disks based on UUID, just to make sure, like if you swap their places, like you swap the cable that's plugged into the disk, it's going to still pick up the same disk. But yeah, the device names, you'll notice the device name, like dev SDA2 is commented out, and dev SDA1 is commented out, but those are the devices. Now, if you were to like swap the cables around or add a bunch of new disks and reorder them, those numbers might change, SDA might become, SDA1 could become, I mean, I guess the partitions are not going to change, but like, say if you added new disks, like SDA might become SDB, and another disk might become SDA, and you might have SDC and SDD, and so on. So to avoid issues with that, it basically identifies them by UUID. So that first column is UUID, then you have the file system. So for the root file system, it's root. For swap, it's none because that's not applicable. For swap, it tells you the type is swap, and for your root partition, the type is ext4 because that's what we formatted it as. And it's read-write relatime. I'm actually not sure what relatime is, but it's a read-writable file system, which is how it's supposed to mount it. And I guess I'm not sure what the defaults are, but it sets the defaults for swap. And 0 and 1 has something to do with how often it does a consistency check on the disk or something to that effect. It's been a long time since I've set this up by hand, but we're not even setting. This is Arch Linux, and we're not even setting this up by hand here. Used to be something I would do fairly often, but not anymore. Not these days. Not even on Arch Linux, where you do everything yourself. But let's see here. So we've generated the file system table. Now we're going to actually chroot into this new system. So currently our root file system is on the CD that we booted off of. So now we're going to change that root to MNT. So whatever is mounted in the MNT directory, that's going to be our new root file system. And that just so happens to be our hard disk that we're installing the system to. So we've installed all the packages, or a lot of the packages, to the hard disk. Now we're going to change root to that. So it's like we're entering into our new system, but we're still going to have the same software and kernel and everything running that we got when we booted off of the CD. So let's give this a shot. So arch chroot. Now chroot is a normal Linux command, but there's a special version of it called arch chroot, and I don't know off the top of my head the differences, but I guess it's supposed to be better and more geared towards Arch. That's about all I can tell you about that. It's generally what you use for most, in most cases on Arch Linux. So chrooting to the MNT. So -H, see what's mounted, and you'll notice we now have devsta2 mounted on root, which is exactly what we want. So software installation, there's going to be some more software to install, and important packages. And this is what I thought. These are packages that really should be on any Linux system. So I have like things that I've categorized as important, semi-critical, and then other things that are just nice to have. Now, these are things that I picked out, not necessarily in the installation guide. Some are not in the installation guide, and I forget which were which, but this is what we're going to install. This would be easier if we could just copy and paste this, but we're going to have to type this out by hand and try not to make any mistakes. A little note here, iputils gives you ping and other utilities, and nettools gives you the old deprecated but nice to have anyway network commands. Those are things like ifconfig, which is nice to have. It's just a normal thing. iproute2 gives you the replacement for nettools, so that's like the IP command. So when we said IPA, that's the new command, and ifconfig is the old way of doing things, and I actually find myself using both now. They're almost interchangeable, but I am very much familiar with the old commands, and I like to have them around. I mean, maybe that just shows my age, but it's worth being familiar with. Honestly, not all systems do things this way. If you switch to like a BSD system, given there are even more different things if you're switching to like BSD or Solaris, there are even bigger differences, but it's worth being familiar with the ifconfig command. Yeah, it's just worth being used to. But just my thoughts on the matter. So let's give this a shot. Pacman-s man pages man-db. Yeah, those are some pretty critical things. I mean, this is like core stuff that you really should have. Man pages, man db, DNS utils, ethtool. Yeah, ethtool is important for. I think DNS utils gives you commands like ns lookup and host and stuff like that. What else? Ethtool lets you like query your Ethernet interfaces. It's a really useful tool. You can check like the duplex and stuff like that. I put slashes here so I could put them on more than one line, but I'm just going to type it out as one big line here, and hopefully it doesn't get all jumbled up. So iputils and nettools, and then we're going to do iproute2. Yeah. What else? open SSH, wget, USB utils, USB mode switch, TCP dump, yeah. SmartMon tools. These are for like monitoring smart errors on your hard disks, so you can check the status and look for any errors and predictive faults on your hard disks, and it's a good thing to have. What else? So we got TCP dump. We're gonna want GNU netcat. GNU. I could probably come up with a more comprehensive list of things that I think should be on any system that you should just have. And given when something comes up, you could just install it pretty easily based on the Arch wiki. But certain things you should just install ahead of time, I think. So GNU netcat. And then I'm going to install the nice to have stuff instead of putting that as a separate command. I'm going to put it all in one command. So MC for Midnight Commander, I believe. DOS, FS tools, exFAT utils. I believe that would help you with like mounting MS DOS based thing like FAT16 and FAT32 and exFAT based USB drives and stuff like that, which are relatively common with like digital cameras and stuff. Their file system, it'll help you for things like that. SD cards, USB drives, stuff like that just happen to be formatted that way. It's good to have that, so you can share things with other operating systems like OS X or Windows, but also share things with your camera and any other devices. So DOS FS tools, exFAT utils, NTFS 3G. Yeah, see, so this isn't like a core thing that you have to have on a Linux system, but it's nice to be able to mount NTFS disks for similar reasons that you would want to mount your exFAT stuff. So NTFS is great because it's cross-plat. It's sadly enough, it's one of your few choices for good cross-platform file systems. The support is pretty decent these days on Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. I switch between all three of those on a daily basis, so it's kind of nice to be able to format a disk with a file system that works on everything. I'd rather just make everything run extension 4 or ZFS, but yeah, ZFS is another story. You need that has RAM constraints, that you need enough RAM and other things, but yeah, I'd rather just run extension 4 or something. But yeah, practically nothing else will run that. Like, you're not gonna, as far as I know, you can't mount it on Mac OS, and I'm pretty sure Windows doesn't have support for it. Bottom line, NTFS is, you're gonna get the best support all around for it with it. So anyways, I say that's a nice to have that we should put on there. It's not like it's gonna bog your system down or anything, so put NTFS on there. And put part clone for cloning partitions, I guess. Parted and part image and GPTF disk. And there we go. It's everything that I would recommend putting on there. Proceed with installation, yes. So hopefully this part doesn't take too long. And yeah, the lighting is not ideal, but it's kind of working for me. It's not too bad. Let's see here. Yeah, after all this, we're going to want to install Wi-Fi software. We could install Wi-Fi software, like you can install IWWPA Supplicant and Dialog. We're not going to install that because we're on VirtualBox and we're not using Wi-Fi. So if you do have Wi-Fi, these are useful, and you might want something that goes more into depth into Wi-Fi configuration, because there's a lot to know and there are a lot of choices for network managers and Wi-Fi software for Arch Linux. So yeah, there's a whole lot more to it, but these are useful packages if you're using Wi-Fi. So development software, this is, I believe this is like GCC and Make and stuff like that. So if you want to be able to build software, you need this. And realistically, I think you should have this on every single Linux system, period. Like this is pretty critical. It's normal for people to say, oh yeah, just build this package to get this. Like I view that as normal. Maybe that's less normal these days, but that's still a thing. And I believe you need it to build things from, if you pull packages from AUR, like the user contributed packages that aren't necessarily approved. It's not like the main Arch repository. I believe you have to compile some of those, but don't quote me on that. So we're going to go ahead and install that. pacman-s base devel. So all right, this tells us what we get. We get autoconf, automake, bin utils. That is super critical. Bison, fake root file. Wow, the file command. Yeah, that's flex, yeah, and then make gzip. Oh, wow, gzip is a critical utility. So some of these are development tools, like you have GCC and other things, but then you also get things like bin utils, find utils, make. Like a lot of these are really core, like just regular Unix utilities that you need to do anything on Linux. But yeah, we're gonna install all of them, yeah, I guess Y is by default. There's no point in me saying Y, but there we go. All right, so let's see if VI, before we install Vim, let's just see what's on here. VI, not found. Vim, not found. Now, that would have been there before we chrooted. That's almost certainly on, actually we know it's certainly on the installation media because we used it to edit one of our files. So while that's on our installation media, it is, we've chrooted into our newly installed system, and we don't have VI on this. So I probably should have included, I gave it its own section, but this is as important or more important than the other software. And if you prefer Nano over VI, you could do Nano instead. Maybe we'll just throw both of those on there. Yeah, Nano is not on here. So pacman -s Vim. You know, we're not actually installing VI, we're installing Vim, which has, I forget exactly what features are better, but you could expect to find things like you'll be able to use your arrow keys while you're not while you are in insert mode, and it might have syntax highlighting. There's a ton of features. I forget exactly which ones are in Vim and which ones are in VI, but Vim has more features and it's better. So just always use Vim. So I don't know if there is a real use case or an argument to just use the old VI. But when people say use VI, they mean Vim. So we're going to install Vim, and that was pretty quick. So we are going to cd. There are different ways you could do it. You could create an alias, but we're going to create a link so that this will work for anyone, anywhere on the system, no matter the user, because I think this is the way to do this. So we're going to go to USR bin. We're going to say ln-s. Vim VI. So yeah, so VI. So we made it so VI is a link to Vim. So when you type VI, it's going to run Vim. So we can say VI if we want. Launch the VI editor. Now let's run pacman. Maybe I should put this in my guide. I probably won't, but Nano. All right, we can install Nano too. Now, Nano is a text editor like this. Now, you don't have to press I to get into insert mode. You just type a bunch of text, enter more text, go up like this, blah, blah, blah. You want to get out, it gives you your commands right at the bottom here. So to, like, say, for example, to exit, it's Control X. Then it'll say save or don't save. You can say no to don't save. But VI, you need to know the VI commands. So yeah, depending on what you're familiar with, if you're a beginner, just use Nano and learn VI eventually when you have time. So there's that, and let me check. Yes, I am still recording. It looks like we're 44 minutes into this video. All right, so system configuration. Let's configure the time zone. Let's see here. ln-sf user share zone info America. Great, we can just tab this out. New York. That's going to be Etsy local time. So there we go. Then we can say, all right, generate Etsy ADJ time, and assumes your hardware clock is set to UCT. All right, so we're gonna try that. HW clock -- sys to HC, and there we go. And what else? Edit your local. Yeah, edit this, and you'll want to add EN, US, UTF-8, and UTF-8, and any other locales you want. So we're setting our locales also. So VI or Nano if you're using Nano, but Etsy locale.gen, and whoops, it's locale, not local, gen. All right, so edit this file, and see, you actually see all your options here, but they're all commented out. So you can scroll down through all of these. Actually, let's go Shift G to the bottom. Yeah, 500 lines of stuff. That's all commented out. That's fine. So you can search for ENU, and given if you're in a different locale, just use whatever locale you're in. So EN, US, UTF-8, and UTF. This line is the line we want. There we go. Write and quit. We've just saved our file. Okay, so generate your locales. Whoops, typoed that. And here we go. So we set the locale in that locale gen file, and then we generated our locales. So we could have uncommented a bunch of them for more locales, presumably. Let's see. Let's edit locale.conf and set the lang. So if you're using something other than English, or you're in a different location, set it to wherever you are. So Etsy locale.conf. Yeah, that didn't tab out because of, I feel better when it tabs out. It makes me feel like I have the correct file. Etsy locale, and I believe this would be a new file, not an existing file that I'm editing. So .conf lang equals en us dot utf-8. So en utf-8. All right, there we go. Believe I've got everything correct in there. Whoops. Yeah, so there we go. Edit that file, and then we're going to have to edit Etsy vconsole. So vconsole.conf. And this does not exist yet, so we're going to add keymap. Are we going to add keymap dot? Edit vconsole to make any changes persistent. Keymap. You know what? I'm going to set a keymap. I don't remember doing this before. I'm going to set a keymap in here, but I'm going to set it to the one that I wanted. Oops. Yeah. So we're almost done, anyways. But yeah, keymaps. User share KDE. We don't have these defined here. All right. So you know what? I'm going to skip this and assume that it works just fine. No. For reference, I'm going to fire up an existing Arch system and just see what, yeah, I'm going to start up this existing Arch system. You won't always be able to do this, but I'm going to see what I used here. Yeah, so that is unnecessary. Okay, I'm going to minimize this and just keep it around just in case as a reference. So yeah, if you are changing, I guess if you're changing your key map, you could put it here. I actually have a separate guide on key maps, but yeah, you can skip this for now if you want. You just skip this. This part is actually not necessary. Our system's going to completely work with or without that. So network configuration. The official Arch Linux network documentation can be found here. So there's a link to the documentation. It's worth looking at. But we're going to start out by setting our host name. And let's set this to, I don't know, I can't think of a creative name for this now. So out of lack of creativity, I'm going to just call this, should I just call this test 1? Test, yeah, you know what, test 1 is fine. Let's just write this out. And let's see, Etsy host file. All right, so I should really come up with a more creative name than that, but let's stick with that for now. Let's say vi Etsy hosts. All right, so okay, if you edit your host file, assume a static IP address of, yeah, this may be different. If you're using DHCP, you can just set this to, yeah, 127.0.0.0. All right, that is fine. Assuming a static IP address, okay. I don't believe I actually have to set this in here. I guess again, I'm going to look at what I did here. Yeah, so I gave it the, yeah, look at that. That's my creative naming on my last system was Arch-Test1. So my name wasn't that far off. Yeah, so we're keeping exactly what I said here in the guide. So if you had a static IP of this, you would fill it in like this. But if you're just using DHCP, you can set this value to 127.0.0.1 as well. All right, I'm going to delete these two comments and say 127.0.0.1 can't put. Then I'm going to say local host, and then I'm going to add the IPv6 line, ::1, local host, and then this guy is going to be, why did alright, test1 dot local domain, test1. Alright, so I guess the first one is more canonical, or is canonical. So that's the host name and the domain. And the second one is just like the short name, which is just the host name. So I don't have a domain defined, so I just went with the local domain, and that's it. So persistent network config. So if you want your network configuration to persist, you can either create a script or systemd combo. Yeah, create a script systemd combo that configures your network interface, or you could just use a network manager. We're going to show you how to use a network manager. There are many different choices for network managers, and we're going to use systemd network D here, or at least that's what I said in my guide that I'm reading off of. I don't know that that's what we're actually going to do. Alright, so persistent network config. I don't believe we need that since we're using DHCP, and I think it's going to work totally fine by default. I'm going to set this to I'm going to set Etsy resolve though. I think that should be set at least. So vi Etsy resolve. So yeah, there's no one configuration file where you would set your static IP address like you might be used to on a Red Hat or a Debian or Ubuntu system. you don't just set your static IP address and your other network interface phase information in like a one configuration file that gets picked up at boot. Here you'd have to run a script that runs at boot and or configure something with a network manager or something along those lines. Not too crazy or anything though. Anyways, etc resolve. Notice that the name server is pointing here. I don't want it pointing there. This is managed by systemd resolve d. Do not edit. Alright, it's telling me not to edit it. I don't recall this being how I did this last time. Maybe it's just a newer version of Arch. I am not 100% sure, but I'm going to leave this for now. If we want to change this, we're going to have to change how systemd resolve d works, or we're going to have to just plain disable that. Yeah, we're going to have to disable that service. Third-party programs should typically not access this file directly, but only through symlink at etcresolve.conf. To manage in a different way, replace the symlink by a static file or a different symlink. Okay, so okay. Through the symlink at. All right. Well, we'll deal with this later. This is working completely fine for now. I generally like to set my name servers to all 8s in every of the octets. So this is one domain name server, and this is the other name server. You have 2 8s and 2 4s. For this, so this would be your secondary, this would be your primary. These are both Google's DNS servers, and you generally prefer that over your ISPs because your ISPs will just choose not to resolve something if they want to block you from getting access to something. And that has happened more than once in the past where we've been blocked from accessing something by our ISP, and you can just get around that by just using Google's DNS. Google is way more permissive, and they want you to have access to everything. So yeah, so you're going to set up either DHCP or static. Yeah, I don't believe we actually have to configure anything for DHCP. You would do DHCP would look like this, static would look like this. You can, yeah, so this is actually using systemd. So, let's see, what did we say about network managers above? All right, so persistent networking, there are many different choices. We're going to use systemd network D here, so I believe it's systemd network D that uses these 2 files. So yeah, let's take a look. I believe that's the case, but I could be wrong. Let's see, vi etc systemd network and 20. You know what? I don't know that this is yeah, I believe this has changed, or I would just have to create it. Alright, so bottom line, I'm going to leave this alone for now because I'm 99% sure that this is going to work just fine. Enable the network manager, systemd network D. 2 commands shouldn't be used during the install if you already have an established connection, but might come in handy later. Okay, so yeah, so you since we're installing, you wouldn't want to start it or check the status, but you probably want systemd network D enabled. So yep, let's see here. I'm gonna go ahead and, you know, I almost want to edit this, but you know what I'm going to do? I am going to do this after you could do this now. I'm going to boot the system up and see if I get my network connection on boot up, and if not, I'm going to edit these files. Or you know what? Even better than that, I'm going to check my existing system. You know what, I did set it in my old system. It should be still valid. I don't recall it being something I had to create. I figured I had to just edit the file, but let's give it a try. So you're gonna have, yeah, like what it shows here, your network interface. So we're gonna make sure we get the network interface correct. So ifconfig, yeah, EMP30. So let's see, EMP0 and S3. So 03. Okay, yeah. So all right, so let's just edit this file, and let's see, the numbers are 0 and 3, so it's slightly different. It's just how it identified my NIC. So it's almost the same as what we see in the guide here. So name equals ENP0S3 instead of 1S0. I'll go back to the beginning of the line, and I'm going to say match. So we're going to match this interface, and we're going to say network DHCP equals IPv4. All right, so that should do it. Let's see what else. So you know, let's enable this. Let's check the status first. Well, you know what? That won't even make any sense because we're looking at this is the daemon running in from the install disk. So when we enable it, we're going to enable it on our installed hard disk and not, you know, what's running from CD. So enable systemd dash network D. All right, so looks like it worked. All right, Wi-Fi. We're not using Wi-Fi, but this could potentially help you with Wi-Fi. This your interface might look like this, and you would want to edit this file. And there's more information on wireless here. So we're skipping over that because we're on a VM and not using Wi-Fi. So user setup. We need a root password. We don't even have a root password set. So we'll root now. So just type PASSWD, and there's our password. I'm not putting something in strong because this is a lab box, and it's a VM and it's a lab box, and it just doesn't matter. So all right, so there we go. Yeah, so for real life on like an actual system, you'd want to use a strong password though, but not on a test box in a lab. So we're going to add a regular user account, user add -m-g, WHEEL, and users. So users is a group that everybody is in, and the wheel group is a group of people who have permission to sudo. And there's actually a sudoers group, and there's a sudo group and a wheel group. We're just going to go with, we're going to use wheel, but that group is in the sudoers file. In it's commented, but when you look at when we configure the sudoers file, we're going to see that commented out, and we just uncomment the wheel group, and that will automatically give us sudo access. So but we'll show you how to do that later, probably. So users -s bin bash. So I'm going to set the shell to bash user1. So username is user1. This is actually the user I use almost any time when I'm logging into a Linux system that I've installed. I just call it user1. Yeah, that's not just something I'm doing for testing. So let's see here. Password for user1. There we go. All right, so bootloader. We don't have a bootloader yet. Something you take for granted on other systems like Ubuntu, where it just installs everything for you. All right, so two popular options are grub and systemd boot. We're going to cover grub here because I like it. That's my reason for that. So yeah, you have others, but you could use systemd. I think systemd just isn't as good. I know it's like the future and everything, but honestly, grub is more fully featured and just better. And I forget the specifics of that. I went over them in the past and decided that grub is the way to go, and I don't think that has changed since. So anyways, let's install grub. So pacman -sy grub os -grober, and so there we go, and there we go. All right, so mkdir boot grub, create that directory, and grub -mk config-o boot grub.conf. Oops, .cfg. All right, so there we go, and found init.rd, found fallback images. All right, we're good. Grub install dev sda. So we're gonna actually install grub on our hard drive. So that puts the bootloader on our hard drive. So our hard drive will actually have, this is the code that actually boots before the operating system. This boots the system up, gives us our boot menu, and then we can select like which installation, which OS we want to launch. And in this case, it's just one installation, the Arch Linux installation that we're doing. But in any case, that's your bootloader and your boot menu and all that stuff. And then that from there loads your actual operating system. So and there's more on grub here if you want to learn more. Microcode. Unix has the ability to apply CPU microcode updates. It's important for buggy CPUs. You only need either Intel or AMD microcode, depending on what CPU you have. You can load both if you want, which is a good idea if you're building a system on a USB drive that may run on a system with either CPU. We just add both here. So there's a little code snippet showing how to add both types of microcode. I'm going to skip that because you can do it, and you should do it if you're on a physical machine. If you don't want to think about it, you can just run both, but probably you know what architecture you're on. And yeah, if you might be moving your hard disk or whatever installation media, whatever you're installing it to, if that might switch between an Intel and an AMD system, install them both. But we're skipping those because we're on a VM. So let's exit out of the chroot environment and reboot. Oops. Exit, reboot, and hopefully this works fine. And there we go. There's our boot menu. That's grub. So we could run. We could boot to like hardware information, root, reboot, power off, mem test, boot existing OS. The first option is just boot Arch Linux. That's what we're going for. That's the default, and that just boots into our system that we just installed. But if you wanted to dual boot, you could like choose another Linux distro to boot into. You could set it up to boot into Windows or whatever else you want. So anyway, our system's booting up now, and there we go. It automatically logged me in. That's a little unsettling. I'm gonna have to go ahead and disable that. But no, you know what? This is me making a mistake. All right, I just booted off of the CD. That wasn't the grub menu that we just created. That was the CD's grub menu, which is why it has mem test and all that other stuff. All right, so reboot and remove disk, and yeah, let's just reset this machine again. And this is our grub menu. So ours is a little bit more simple. Now you could add more stuff to it to look like the boot CD's grub menu, but this is what we have by default, and the default is to run Arch Linux. So this is our grub menu. You could configure it in all sorts of ways to make it look pretty, but yeah, this is what we have. So let's boot. Yep, and there we go. That was really fast. That was even faster than the installation media. here we are, booted into our system at the login prompt. So we named our system test1. Let's log in as user1. All right, here I am. Now, if I say sudo to root, I can't do it because I'm not in the sudoers file. So I can say, I can su to root because I know the root password. Now I can edit etc sudo. This is what I was talking about before. So either way, this is the working system installed. We now have Arch Linux installed. We've already completed the basic installation of Arch Linux. This is how you install Arch Linux. This is it. This is everything. We've got the system installed. Now, everything after this point, this is the core basic Arch Linux system. This system is up and running. We're basically, we've got it. This is it right now. But there's more from here on out. We just install whatever software we want or do whatever we want with the system. But this is it. This is the up and running system right now. This is basically a fully installed Arch Linux system. But we're going to still install X Windows and stuff. But there's some post boot stuff to do. So I'm going to edit the sudoers and give myself sudo permission, and then we're going to do that time and date setup stuff. So sudoers. Edit sudoers, and most of the stuff is commented out except for this entry, root all. So the root user can sudo, which doesn't mean anything because it's root. They have all permission anyways. Now notice there's this thing we just have to uncomment it. Anyone in the wheel group will have permission to run any command they want with sudo. So and also same deal, we could do anyone in the sudo group. I added my new user to the wheel group, so I'm gonna uncomment wheel, and I'm gonna get rid of that space because it shouldn't be there, and I'm gonna right quit and right quit exclamation mark because it's read only, and there we go. Now I'm gonna exit out to myself, and then I'm gonna run sudo su. Type in my password, and let's see if I typoed that. Yeah, there we go. Now I'm root. So I can exit out of that, I'll run it again, and it won't need a password for however many minutes. So you could say sudo, I don't know, uptime, just to run some command as root. That command doesn't need root. Well, let's say cat etc shadow. You can't cat etc shadow as a regular user. You could say sudo, so you're running it as root, and there we go. We can cat etc shadow. That's where all your encrypted passwords are for every user. So anyways, we've got sudo working. So sudo su. I'm just going to run this as root. So sudo su to root. Now I'm root, and I'm just going to run these. So time date ctl set ntp true. CTL status, there we go. So it now believes that the local time is 2 a.m. or 2:08 a.m. EDT, and it's in New York, and that is correct. It is now basically my host system is running Ubuntu, and yes, it is 2:08 a.m. So yeah, that matches up, and so that's EDT, which is UTC -4. All right, so I guess we're off by 4 hours from London, so that's not too much. So there we go. That's everything in the basic install. That's everything in this install guide. So from here, let's do XFCE. Now I have a few of these, and a lot of them overlap in what they let you do. I'm going to do XFCE first. And I'm not going to do exactly everything in each of these, but I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to go through these really quick to give you a, so this tells you to upgrade your system first thing. So you have updated packages and package lists. Now we just installed the system, so we don't need to do, let's just do that for good measure, just to see that it tells us nothing needs to be updated. So I'm going to exit out of root and just use sudo like it tells me in my instructions. So sudo pacman-s yyu, and it cannot find the mirrors. There's Okay, so all right, so maybe we should have configured this before. I must have typoed that or looked at the wrong. Yeah, so our system was not complete. We missed something, but we'll get that. So name serve. I didn't use sudo for this. All right, sudo to use root privileges to VI this file. Remove that and name server 8.8.8.8, and then do 4.4, and there we go. There we go. Now we can resolve Google, and Pacman should work too. So update our system with Pacman, and now instead of a bunch of errors, it looks like it works successfully. So the YY just forces it to look for updates no matter what, and I believe, and yeah, so it checked for what updates there are. It says starting full system upgrade, nothing to do, because I just installed the system and I'm as up to date as you can get. So nothing's been updated in the last few minutes since I installed this. So to install XFCE, you just run XFCE and XFCE goodies. But before we do that, let's install X Windows. So and I have a little, I'm going to go over this stuff. So here's an explanation of some of the packages you might see people recommending. And you know what? Before I actually do this, I'm going to clone this system, just so I can have a clean, more up-to-date system. So I'm going to clone this VM. I cannot clone the running system. Oh well. I'll use my other system for this. All right, no big deal. I can create a new system later. All right. So I'm going to go straight ahead and install X Windows. So, and I cannot copy and paste. All right, so sudo pacman-s xorg-x-init and xterm. All right, so you're going to want xterm. You're just going to want that on there. You should throw that on there. Xorg includes the xorg-server, but no xorg-xinit. So one thing people will tell you to install, like I even see people saying, oh yeah, first you should run pacman install xorg and xorg-server, but xorg already, it's a meta package that includes xorg server. I forget if it was meta package or group, but it includes it anyways, but it doesn't include xorg init, so install both of those. Xorg server utils doesn't exist anymore. You'll see that in the old instructions. And what else? Xorg apps is a group. Everything in it is already included in Xorg. So I verified that's just a subset of what's in Xorg. Xterm, you're going to want this. So we install it. So yeah, this is how you install X Windows on Arch Linux. Just hit all the defaults to install everything by default. Now, once X Windows is installed, it shouldn't work by default because StartX tries to run TWM and that window manager won't be installed. We could install it, but we don't want it. So, yeah, you'll see when we edit the file, though, which we are going to be doing. And come on. All right, there we go. All right, so so we have let's see what it says. Start X, and look at that. You know what? I was wrong. It started X Windows just fine. Yeah. So we can launch another X term if we want. Look at that. So that's X Windows. That's all you have to do to install X Windows is use Pacman and install Xorg, Xorg init, and Xterm. You could probably skip those. You could probably just install Xorg, and it would probably do what you saw there. Probably, but I'm not sure. But yeah, install all three of those packages. Now a nice thing to install, we're probably not going to make use of this. It might help with like scaling or something. But if you're in VirtualBox, you can install VirtualBox guest utils. Now, I've only ever been able to do this by mounting, like you can go to VirtualBox and tell it to, there's something here that lets you mount, insert guest editions CD image. So you can insert the CD image, mount it, and run some stupid scripts on it that might fail. I always view it as kind of being a pain, but it gives you better integration with the GUI. But you can actually install this using Pacman in Arch Linux, and there might be a package for Ubuntu too, but I have not tried it. So I'm gonna sudo pacman -s VirtualBox guest utils, and install these for good. I don't think we're doing anything that's really going to require it, but it's good to install. It's also kind of nice to install some things for demo purposes. So you can install Xize and Xclock. I don't think they're super useful, but they're good demo stuff. And Xterm, we already did that, but that's nice to have also. I'd say it's a critical, not a nice to have. But, like our demo we did before wouldn't have worked without Xterm. So VirtualBox, Xorg Xize, org-xyes, Xorg Xclock. So let's install these, and when we start X, we could say, and it gave us an Xclock by default. It looks like it's trying to run that by default, which is pretty neat. And that's going to be in our xinit RC, I believe. So let's see here. Let's say Xeyes. I love this app. So yeah, the eyes follow your cursor around on the screen. It's just a neat thing to demo X Windows. This thing has been around forever. Anyways, yeah, that's why you don't need that at all. That's far from critical, but just a good thing to demo. Now, I'm not going to install these because I have not needed them yet, but you can install your video drivers for NVIDIA, AMD, or Intel, whatever your video hardware is. You can install, you may be totally fine without them. It might help you a little bit, so you could install those. I'm not going to. I'm in VirtualBox and it works fine. Let's talk about ALSA utils. So if you want your sound to work, you're going to probably want ALSA. I haven't played around with sound on Arch Linux a whole lot. So far I've just been doing it in VirtualBox. I am going to have to do a video where I install Arch Linux on a laptop, but not today. So let's install this anyways. Pacman and -s and ALSA utils. Oops, sudo, because it requires root permissions. And now if we want to test that, ALSA mixer, there's our ALSA mixer. So you can, even from the command line, you can configure your sound. So this is pretty neat, right? Yeah, pretty neat thing to be able to do. Anyways, we could say speaker test. So I don't have speakers or sound connected on VirtualBox but yeah, you could do that. Anyway, we're not going to continue with that. That's how you get ALSA installed though. And you can also install Pulse Audio if you want. So let's see, moving along here. If you want XFCE, this will give you a real desktop. Like what we saw in X Windows before is not like, I mean, that gives you X Windows, but it's not like a great desktop to work with or anything. So we want to install, you know what, let's look at our XInit RC. So VI, let's see, X11, I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit here. So scroll to the bottom of this file, and you'll notice it launches TWM, xclock, xterm, and execs xterm. So that's when we started X Windows. It runs this script, and you'll see it actually, the window manager selected was TWM, I believe that's what that is, and it sets the geometry of these terminals on your window, so it sets out how they're laid out, and that's why the X clock was this, instead of just popping up somewhere in the middle of the screen really big like Xeyes did, X clock was really tiny and up in the corner, which is kind of a little bit more practical, but that's because it was set, the geometry was set in this file here. Now we're going to disable a lot of this stuff and replace it when we do XFCE. So we're going to launch XFCE with this and see how we can set this up in the XInit RC. And then after that, we are going to then we're going to install Display Manager, and then we're probably going to do that before we install our other environments. Or it just makes sense. We'll do KDE and stuff later. All right, so quit out of here, and let's go back and install XFCE. So sudo pacman-s XFCE4. That's to get XFCE. This is all you have to do. XFCE4, and that's it. But now, if you want extra stuff like the terminal and a bunch of other things that are kind of really nice to have, you can do XFCE4-goodies, and that gives you a bunch more stuff. So this doesn't matter, just, yeah, it might matter to someone, but not to me. It probably should matter to me. But this will install X Windows. It's a fair amount of software, but nothing too crazy. So let's see here. Alright, yeah, so after this we're going to install a display. We're going to first try it with XInit RC, and then we're going to try Display Manager, and then we're going to install, we're going to try installing probably i3 apps and then KDE, and we're going to skip BSPWM. Yeah, that's worth skipping for now. Well, I'm going to come up with a good tutorial for it later, but there's not a whole lot to see with it. Alright, so import PGP key, we are going to do that. I believe I could have just hit yes. And there we go. Alright, so hitting start. So now we're going to go and edit this same file again. Oh, and worth noting, this is the system-wide config file for this, which would affect all users on the system, which is fine. But you could also place this as a .dot file in your home directory, and I believe it works the same. I have not tested it, but I believe that's the same thing. So that's another way of doing the same thing. So right now we are going to comment all of these things out because we don't want any of them. And then we are going to add another line here that says exec start XFCE4. So when it still does a lot of stuff above this commented out area, but then when it gets down to this area, it just runs XFCE4. It executes this script or binary, I forget which it is, but that will launch XFCE. So, and I did not sudo. So, So there, did I not sudo again? I just edited the same exact file and did the same. Yeah, I am getting tired. I am, yeah, you can tell I'm getting more tired by the increased frequency of typos and mistakes. Let's see here. Exec start XFCE 4. Alright, so exactly what I said before, except this time it should let me save the file. And there we go, because I remembered to sudo this time instead of not sudoing twice in a row. Now that we've done that, I believe this works without chmodding it, but I'm going to chmod. Oh, you know why it's saying chmod it? If it's in your home directory, chmod it. Yeah, I am a little bit inconsistent with my instructions here. I should leave a note to myself. Yeah. Yeah, so I'll have to go through and fix this. And if you look at this and I haven't fixed it, that's because I didn't get around to it. Anyways, so you don't actually have to chmod this. But yeah, let's start X. And there we go. So now when we start X, instead of running TWM, it runs this, which looks ancient. It runs, what is this VBox client stuff? All right, anyways, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so this is what XFCE looks like by default. Now you can configure this to look a whole lot different from this, but this is the default look and feel of XFCE. So this is pretty neat. This is our system now. It's not scaling at all, so it looks like those tools are. You know what we could do now? We could say. I don't believe this is. I think we have to look for settings and. All right, system. Settings and displays. Where is it? Where display? Display right here. All right. We could set this to a higher resolution. I don't want to do higher than my actual monitor, which is not that high. Let's set this to something high, but not a lot. Yeah, I think this should be just fine right here. Hit apply, and look at that. Keep this config. Now we have a bigger desktop. All right, so excellent. Let's keep this as is, and let's set a wallpaper just because that's what I would want to do every time when I start. All right, we're going to go with this one. This is completely fine. All right, there we go. There's XFCE with a wallpaper. Here's what the file in. See, now we've been doing everything on the command line all manually without even like a wizard or anything. And now all of a sudden we're here in this graphical environment that looks like all nice and pretty and everything. We have everything we could possibly want. We're up and running with our desktop environment. Things are way less. Yeah, this is just completely different, right? We got our menu with all these things, our nice wallpaper, our file manager, and our. Yeah, now this will launch our browser. Now, it doesn't launch anything. Now, that's the thing. You could select, if there's no browser installed, it just doesn't do anything. But you could set this to launch different browsers. But when we install Firefox, it's going to launch Firefox. So, and I believe that was really easy, but it takes a little bit. Pacman-S, and sudo Firefox. I believe it's that easy to install. I mean, it should be easy to install Firefox. And I think Chrome was a little more involved. I forget what you had to do for that, but we're just doing Firefox today because I feel like to get a working system, a working desktop system up and running with X Windows, you should be able to launch a browser. Then we're going to get out of here and set up a display manager, and then we are going to, we're going to. Yeah, all right, so there we go. Looks like Firefox finished. We can just click on this icon now, and this should launch Firefox. And it's being slow because we're in a VM. Well, look at that. Oops. Yeah, that's fine, whatever. All right, Google. All right, there we go. We've got Google images. I don't know, some whatever you want to look for. All right, we can get a new wallpaper if we want. Here's a nice one. No, that's lower as all right. Doesn't matter. Yeah, Firefox is working. You're not here to watch me play around with Firefox though. All right, so let's get out of here. We can log out and say log out, and we're back to the command line. Which yeah, there we go. Resolution's back down. So that we run start X to get that to work. Now you could do this. You could boot your system up every time in text mode, and then just start X to get into XFCE, and that's a completely valid way to do things. A lot of people prefer that. So I would actually say to let's see, scroll down here, and so we have two display managers that I've documented here. There's LXDM. We're not even installing that. Yeah, we're not installing that one. We're going to skip past that. That's just extra info that I put in there. And we really want LightDM. I just think that's the way to go. I probably should have put that first, but sudo pacman-s lightdm gtk ber, and there we go. And sudo systemctl enable lightdm. So we've installed LightDM and the LightDM greeter, which apparently you need for whatever reason. I could not give you too much more depth of information on the greeter, but it's necessary. So you install both of them, and then you need to enable the service for LightDM, so it will run as a service. So when we boot up, it's going to be running. So enable that service. It's all good. Now let's reboot our system. And on boot up, it should come up to, all right, there's our grub prompt, so booting up. And on boot up, it should come up to a graphical login manager. So that's our display manager. So it starts X Windows automatically for us, but doesn't log us in. So there we go. X Windows is started. It's not logged in. Now you can log in from X Windows instead of logging in through a text-based environment and starting X Windows. So yeah, you could also, you know, suspend it, shut down, restart, do all this stuff. You can select which session. We only have XFCE installed now, but you can select your session here. Now we could log in as whoever. You could say other for another user. But anyway, you log in here, it'll log us into XFCE. And look at that, I remembered our settings and increased the resolution for me. That is, and Firefox even remembered where I was, even though I killed Firefox before we left. All right, that is great. So from here, we're going to be doing things from a terminal, but it's a terminal in X Windows. So when you, for these other environments like i3 gaps, you can actually edit your xinit.rc file, and I actually put instructions for that for i3 gaps, and I believe you could do the same for KDE, but I didn't put instructions for doing that. So you could do that through you could do your xinit, or where did I put my xinit.rc? Yeah, so your xinit.rc file here, you could specify i3 gaps instead of XFCE, and just start that instead when you install i3 gaps. But if you install i3 gaps while we have a window manager, the window manager should recognize i3 gaps automatically and give you that as an option when you start up. And that's what we're going to do here, because we already have the display manager installed. So yeah, this is it for XFCE. We have a working desktop system with XFCE. Now let's kill that. We don't need it anymore. Same deal with that. We're going to do i3 gaps So normally you would do a full update. We already just did that. So now for i3 gaps, you just install the i3 gaps package. Now note that there is an i3 package, but and it conflicts with i3 gaps, but i3 gaps is the same thing, but it has gaps functionality, and that's usually what people are looking for. So i3 gaps, sorry, so sudo pacman-s i3 gaps. And that installs i3 gaps. Now i3 gaps is going to give you like garbled up all the text, like the labels for the windows and buttons and everything else is all the display status is going to be all garbled and messed up unless you install the fonts, which you need to do if you want i3 gaps to work. So I found that you need to install this font and the i3 status bar. Or unless you get another status bar. But you need these two things. Now there was another font, there were two fonts recommended that it could use. This is one of them, and this is the one that I picked. I didn't list the other font here. I probably should have, but I didn't. So, sudo pacman ttf deja vu. That will install the font that we need for it to display properly. It really looks bad without the font. It's not like it has a bad font if you don't install this. It just has garbled text, or at least when I tried it, it did. The last time I tried it, it came out terribly. So you do want to make sure you install that font. And at the same time, we're going to install the i3 status bar. And yes. All right, there we go. Now that's it. Now in this that installed i3 gaps. That's all we had to do. Now in this document, we go over installing X Windows yet again, just like we did for XFCE, drivers, blah blah blah. We go over the xinit rc stuff, where here, instead of saying exec start XFCE, you'd say exec i3. That's if you wanted to configure it to work with xinit rc. But now that we have a display manager in, we don't need to do any of that. So basically, and here we actually talk about installing a LightDM display manager. But anyways, exit out of here. Now that we have the display manager, all we have to do is log out and say log out. All right, so we can go up here to this little thing here and notice we have some actual options. We could choose XFCE or i3 with debug log. We're going to go with i3, select that, and then when we log in, all right, you have not configured. Do you want me to generate a config? All right, I'm going to say enter for yes. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the default. All right, so there we go. Now we have got a blank screen. Now to start with, to use i3 gaps, it's way more minimal, less intuitive and everything than XFCE. If you haven't used it before, it's going to be a little bit weird, but yeah. Oh yeah, and before, like all this stuff at the bottom, I believe this is that bar, but I was getting like garbled text there. And those two prompts to generate the config file that you saw, the first time I ran this, I could not read those because I had not installed that font that we installed. So that font we installed up at the top here, this TTF Deja Vu, having not installed that, I could not read those prompts. I had no idea what they were saying and what was going on. I accidentally ended up getting past that by hitting enter, and it just acknowledged the dialogues. So this was my first time actually reading those messages, even though I've installed i3 gaps before. Now to use i3 gaps, you need some commands. Now it's a nice, if you know all the shortcuts and stuff, it's really fast and an efficient system to use, but it's less intuitive. But it's fast and slick and everything, but not for everyone. So to open a new terminal, you say meta enter. Now meta is your Windows key. And that prompt at the beginning gave us the option to choose a different key instead of that, I believe. I only skimmed it, I didn't read it carefully. So say Windows key. All right, let's switch over to this. So Windows key enter will open up a new terminal. Hit Windows key enter again, there's another terminal, and again, and again, and again. So we can open up terminals that way. Now, if you want to exit i3, you can say meta shift E, and then it brings up this thing that says, do you really want to enter? And you can say yes, or do you really want to exit? Now we're out. Now we can log back into i3. So enter. Now this is all I've documented: meta enter, and meta shift. Now to really be able to do stuff in i3, you're going to want to learn all the commands and all the shortcuts. Like, that's the whole point of using it, is to learn all of these shortcuts and everything. Otherwise, you're not going to really be able to do anything if nothing else, you're not going to be taking advantage of it. So if you are using it, do learn the shortcuts. But yeah, just to be able to demo it and see that it works, you at least need to be able to know how to open a terminal and how to exit i3 gaps. And that's how you do it, because there's like no menu you can click on and say exit. So let's see here. You can say window and let me select this. Window enter, and I forget how. Oh yeah, window arrow key. All right, so that will split. So you can switch between these, saying window. Then you hit down. I forget how you split something horizontally. Yeah, but anyways, you can split things. It doesn't always have to go vertically like this. You can split horizontal. You can come up with all kinds of neat configurations, and you can switch between different desktops. So it's really flexible. But yeah, I'm just not that familiar with it. I'm not an i3 gaps user. I'm tempted to actually learn it for similar reasons that I'm tempted to learn Emacs, but I have not learned Emacs yet, and I have not learned i3 gaps. And so so that's that. That is i3 gaps. So that's why you see on my host system here, I'm running KDE. And if I switch away from this, it's probably going to be to run Budgie. Budgie's another excellent desktop environment or window manager. Anyway, yeah, Shift E. You know what? Actually, let's stay in i3 gaps to install some things. So we install that. Oh, you know what? Let's install Polyball just to do it. -S Polyball. Oops. And we'll have to edit that out. There's my password right there. Hollywood. Yeah, all right. So I believe that needs fixing. I'm either typoing something and too tired to realize it, or I have the wrong package. So let's do KDE now. So for KDE, assuming you don't have X Windows installed yet, you could say pacman-s xorg plasma Wayland session and KDE applications. Now we already have xorg, so if you're starting from scratch, that's what you do, but we already have xorg, so we don't have to type that. But let's say sudo pacman plasma and plasma and oops, I cannot type tonight. This should take a little while, but yeah, so once this is installed, we're going to enable the display manager and the network manager service. So yeah, let's let this run. So we already have LightDM, and this would probably work just fine with LightDM. And you know what? I'm actually going to try that out. I'm going to try launching this from LightDM, and then I'm going to install KDE's display manager. So SDDM is KDE's display manager. We're just going to try out running that. And how about that? I'm an hour and 50 minutes into this video. Should take a little while. It will not be fast. This is pulling down like Image Magic and all kinds of extra things. MJPEG tools, like tons of stuff. I mean, I guess this is what you get when you install KDE-applications. What else? And we are, of note, we're switching to Plasma Wayland session. So we'll run Wayland, which is it provides enough support. I believe that's supposed to be like an Xorg alternative. But so I believe Xorg wouldn't be running when Wayland is, and I guess like you don't need it, but I guess KDE Plasma Desktop is now pushing Xorg to its limits, and they want you to be running Wayland, and Wayland is like the new the new X Windows or whatever, which I guess at one point was competing with Ubuntu's Mir, and then they eventually just scrapped the whole Mir project. But it's kind of sad how Ubuntu just scraps. They build things and scrap them. Built up, scrapped it. Built built Unity, scrapped it. Was it Unity? No. They built a few things and scrapped them. Yeah, the Ubuntu Touch, like the mobiles they were building, they scrapped those. But now you have other systems like the Pine Book and the Pine Phone that are Linux based and are good options. Oh, this does take forever. It almost feels like it's taking longer than the actual main system installation, which isn't too crazy sounding since that's relatively slim and trim, and this is basically the opposite of that. Yeah, so still just grinding along, installing more packages. All right, it finished. So first, let's just get out of here. All right, so Windows Shift E and exit yes. So now we can select Plasma. So you'll notice we have Plasma and Plasma. Let's try Plasma Wayland. I want to try it. So we have our i3, our XFCE, and Plasma. So let's try logging in. So this is going to be a different experience from i3 gaps. This is actually what I'm running on my host system is KDE. This is the I jump between different desktop systems, but yeah, this is KDE, and this is the default install of KDE on Arch Linux. So there we go. It's a little laggy on this VM. It's not bad. Let's see, Dolphin File Manager. There we go. Let's see, resolution. That's interesting that it doesn't just. I mean, well, whatever. It gives us KDE and does it give us console. There's our console. Yeah, so there's a terminal. I mean, this is not bad wallpaper. We could change it, I guess. That doesn't matter. All right, whatever. Yeah. So let's just change the resolution. Or, yeah, you know what? Let's not change the resolution. Let's do this. Console. And let's actually finish what we were trying to do before we get sidetracked here. So let's change it to SDDM. So all right, let's see here. What package are we installing? So we are. Oh, so it's already installed. We're just going to enable system ctl enable SDDM service. Okay, so we light DM is already there. So let's say so we've removed light DM, and now let's or we've disabled the light DM service, and we're going to enable the SDDM service. That's KDE's display manager. And you know what? We don't really need this network manager service, but we're gonna just do it anyways. I think this was recommended because it works well with KDE, but anyways, and there's me not sudoing, so it's asking me for permissions, and then not working. All right, there we go. So reboot, and let me just do that. So let's start up here, and come on, come on. All right, there we go. All right, that looks a little bit nicer. I don't know that it's better, but yeah, that is our yeah, that's SDDM. It's nice the appreciation you get when you install all these display managers, not just the window manager, but you install the display managers and try different ones. You get a better appreciation for the system overall. Now this is a display manager replacing light DM, but interestingly, yeah, it basically does all similar stuff. Like you can choose i3 if you want, XFCE, or you could choose KDE Plasma. Let's try Plasma on Wayland. And there we go. There's our KDE. Oh, and network manager. One network connection enabled. So this is why you want the network manager, so that it will work with KDE. Not that you really need that, but it's kind of nice if you're going to be running KDE. Yeah, this feels a little laggy, but I mean it is KDE and it is in a VM. So yeah, it is what it is. Let's see. I just want to change the. Let me just search for. You know what? Let's change this to a dark theme. Apply. There we go. Let's gotta love how it doesn't change everything. All right, here we go. Breeze dark. Apply to every. There we go. That's nice. All right. So display. Let's change this to a higher resolution. So let's just go with this. I know that this is slightly lower resolution than what I have. Alright, so there we go. Yeah, well, I don't know why I chose that. Alright, whatever. This is fine. Alright, nice high resolution. It's actually taller than my screen, but not as wide. I don't know why I chose to go with that, but and look at how nice this menu is. KDE usually looks pretty nice. Like this actually looks nice. I actually feel like this looks nicer than my actual desktop. Kind of like my host system desktop, how the bar sort of curves like that. This one's just flat and everything. I like my choice of icons and everything. But this, like look at how it highlights those menu items. I think that looks nice. Right here, yeah, this is just not. This is an alright effect, but nowhere near as nice as like this. Look at this. Yeah, I should pay attention to my themes. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's Arch Linux. We've got XFCE, i3 gaps, and KDE installed. We've tried it with Xinit RC, and we've tried it with Display Manager, with two different display managers. So We've gone from 0 to a working desktop with different display managers and different 3 different window managers installed. So that's pretty good. We've got a full Arch system built with full working desktops, Firefox working. So this is pretty much what we meant to achieve in this video, and that is pretty much it. So thanks for watching. If you found this useful, click the thumbs up, give us a like and a subscribe. It really helps out a lot. Helps boost our videos and helps support what we do. Just click the like button if you like this video or found it useful or helpful or informative in any way. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and hit the alert button if you want to see when our next video comes out, because we're going to have a lot of other useful stuff as well. If you didn't like the video, leave some criticism down below in the comments. If you did like the video, just tell me what you liked about it in the comments down below. Anything you want to say, I want to hear what your thoughts are. Just leave a comment down below. Commenting is a great way to just leave a comment. And as always, thanks for watching, and hopefully you enjoyed this video.